My name is Lauren Carr, and I'm the Director of Education, Engagement, and Inclusion at Ensemble Theater Cincinnati, and welcome to Meet the Artists. Each week, we have the absolute pleasure of diving in behind the scenes with a different aspect of art, of artists in our community. And this week, unlike any other, we are very excited. We get to dive into behind the scenes with a playwright, a local playwright, a local young playwright of absolute distinction. Please join me in welcoming Isaiah Reaves.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Seriously, this is such an honor. I was really looking forward to this, so I can't wait.
Absolutely, our pleasure. So for everyone who is watching, as we go through this evening, if you have any questions for Isaiah, please feel free to go ahead and type those into the comment box, and we will definitely work to address those questions. As you all viewers may know, I tend to have a few questions myself because I love these artists that I get to talk to each week. It is absolutely my joy. So Isaiah, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just for our viewers, just to give us a little bit of your background. So where did you grow up and the such?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm very Cincinnati. You can tell by the accent. I was born at University Hospital, so this history is with me. The city history is with me always. My grandmother was a civil rights activist and poet. In the 1960s, my grandmother, Betty Daniels Rosemond, was a freedom writer down south, throughout Mississippi, throughout Louisiana, on the bus, making a difference when she was my age. And my mother was and is a hairdresser with her own business. She's amazing. So creativity was always in my household. And I began my life singing, literally began my life singing. I had the mic in my hand when I was 2-3 years old, which is so strange because I sort of went to writing on my own. But it's strange because my grandmother is a poet and my mother also writes, you know? So it was just so interesting that they had me singing, and I enjoyed singing growing up. But as I turned 10, 11, 12, when I started writing my first full-length plays, that was when I really felt a sense of purpose because I discovered the Diary of Anne Frank. She was my age. I could relate to her. She was making a difference through the written word. And I really wanted to do that. And I also was inspired by Tennessee Williams growing up. So throughout my teens, I started writing. I started self-producing through the support of my village, my community, all of whom have supported me from the very beginning. So I've been really fortunate.
So you grew up in Cincinnati. Where did you go to school?
I went to a number of different schools, but I graduated from Moeller High School, went there throughout high school. So I went to a number of different schools, though, mostly Catholic schools in the greater Cincinnati area. Shout out to Mercy Montessori.
Hey, so many of us native Cincinnatians, that's kind of was our route to where we are now, was through the Catholic school system.
Right.
And then you are a very recent graduate.
Yes, 2020.
From NCU.
Yes, Northern Kentucky University was my home for 4 years. And because of professors like Ken Jones, Daryl Harris, Brian Robertson, who just directed Fortune with you guys at Ensemble, they really poured into me and they believed in me. And I always say, if you believe in me, I can do things that I didn't even know that I could do because they believed in me more than I believed in myself. And I really needed that foundation to grow artistically.
Oh, that's one of the things that always strikes me in whenever I have the honor to talk with you is how profound you always, and I say this as someone who's kind of not creepily followed your work for a very long time. That's not creepy. That's not creepy. But you always have such poise that does definitely speak beyond your years. And
Thank you.
I'm sure that you've been called an old soul more times than I could even begin to. There's just something about you that emanates this full maturity for your years, and even prior to you graduating from your undergraduate program. It's just you've got this thing, Isaiah.
I appreciate that so much. I've been told that from the time I was a little kid, because another inspiration I had, were these old classic films in which I didn't see myself. And I just thought, what if I took this style, this rendition of storytelling, and married it with my life story? And that's where a lot of the work has come from. It's been deeply autobiographical, but I've been called an old soul forever.
So you said you got writing, or you got started writing, apologies, at a young age. What was your first, not even your first full play, but what was the first piece that you wrote? What was that about?
It was a very, very cringeworthy adaptation of The Diary of Anne Frank, and I didn't know that there were already a million of those, but that was my inspiration, so I wanted to capture that. So I was 11 years old, and I sat down, I was writing it, and I got to like 175 pages, and I deleted it all. I deleted it all as I was typing by accident, couldn't get it back, didn't know how to get it back. And I tried for a few minutes, wasn't working. I was devastated. And my mother will tell you today, I literally went into her bedroom and started crying hysterically. And I just laid at the foot of her bed and I cried. And the next day I got up and I started completely all over again from scratch. And that was when I knew this is what you're supposed to do. This is your passion, that I was willing to just start again. And it's a terrifying story because that's every beginner playwright's nightmare, right? Is to lose that first draft. But I did. And I think it made me better,
Wow. Okay. Cool. I mean, what a terrifying moment.
Yes.
Like, as you said that, I'm like, wait, what? Because I know how I feel, if I accidentally lose just like, I'd forget to save it in an Excel document, right? Just like an update. But, oh man, a whole piece. So, okay, so going from there, what was the first piece that you wrote that you completed?
The first piece that I wrote that was completed was that adaptation of Diary of Anne Frank. I did another bad adaptation of Little Women, and then I continued writing. I wrote my first original piece, not an adaptation. It was called December Mourning because it took place at a funeral, so mourn. It's a very 14-year-old title, but that was my first original piece. And from there, I wrote Wyatt's Bed, which I self-produced at 16 and was read at Cincinnati Playhouse when I was 15. And that was a very formative experience for me as well. And just a transformative experience. I learned so many lessons, so many truths, and it informed everything that I do today.
So tell us about Wyatt's Bed. What is that play about, and where did it go from there?
So Wyatt's Bed, in its original form, it had many different forms, was a story about a white female sex worker in 1959 New York, which we've seen before. But that was what I was exposed to. That was the literature I was consuming. That was the Tennessee. That was the classic Hollywood cinema. So I was writing in that mold, and it was about the ups and downs, the ins and outs of her life as she became involved with a married older man. And the fallout from that, very scandalous, for that age. And it was performed. I learned a lot, didn't know anything about lights. We had an incredible team. It was just a bunch of us high school kids, including Josh Beasley, who we know, doing this.
Apprentices.
Yes. Doing this show. And it was just a really fun learning experience. And I put the play down, and someone I trusted said, "You'll return to this one day." And I did. And the white female prostitute became a Black gay male sex worker, and it became the Black Boy in Pink, which is my latest play. So it was a complete revision. Began on commission at Northern Kentucky University, directed by Brian Robertson. I had an incredible cast of students doing that, and that was a really, really rich, beautiful, informative experience. And that was only a year ago when we first did it in workshop at NKU, and so much has happened since then.
Well, and that play, Black Boy in Pink, actually got you to one of the finalists in the Jackie Demaline playwriting competition. And today, of all days, was the day where the excerpt performance of a reading from that play was posted on ETC's Facebook page and through our YouTube channels, featuring Kenny Hamilton and Ryan Gilreath.
Yes, and they were phenomenal. And Christian was phenomenal. Everyone, thank you. Jared, Doran, thank you to Lynn. Thank you to Jackie Demaline for your legacy and for supporting young local artists. That's so important. And it means a lot to me to be in the company of just great playwrights who are also finalists for this award. It just means a lot to be in that company. And I deeply appreciate it. And with this play in particular, with it being so deeply autobiographical, it means even more. It's all the more sweeter that it was recognized in this way.
And for those of you who are watching who may not know, Jackie Demaline was a theater critic in the Cincinnati area for many, many years. Lover, hater, she made a definite impact on our city. And unfortunately, we lost her a couple of years ago. But before she passed, she set up a playwriting competition for college students to be able to submit their plays from the greater Cincinnati area. So that is a reach through all of Ohio and Kentucky and Indiana to submit their plays, to be under consideration. And we have several submissions throughout the year. It's kind of amazing how many budding young voices that there are, but your voice tends to rise to the top. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, that means so much. That means so much that you say that. I really appreciate that, and just so flattered.
So after you worked on Wyatt's Bed, where did you go from there? What was the next piece that you worked on?
I started writing a play called The Color of the Leaves. And I began writing that at 15 while Wyatt's Bed was finding its footing. And I sent it off to Young Playwrights Inc. and in New York. At the time, it was just a competition for under 18-year-old playwrights, and it placed in the top 20 as a finalist in one of those first drafts. And I was like, okay, there's something here. So I kept working on it. And when I was a sophomore at NKU, I partnered with some of my classmates, and we did it in our Henry student studio series in 2017. Mm-hmm. And from there, it was just like, boom, it was a complete whirlwind. And from there, the show has been done citywide. It was done at Cincinnati Lab Theater, and they really, really supported me. Carolyn Clifford directed that. And it was just so amazing to have women's voices and women's creatives in the room. I really believe in uplifting women. I believe in uplifting voices that we don't ordinarily see. So that was a really special show. It's my most produced play. So I'm really astonished by that.
And I had the privilege of seeing that play last summer at Cincinnati Lab Theater, which is amazing to think that that was last year.
I know.
Quarantine time, I have no idea when things happen, but to think that that was around this same time last year is pretty amazing. And that cast, one of the things that really struck me in seeing that production, and it felt to me a collaboration between Carolyn Clifford and yourself in taking the experiences of this woman who had been put down and abused and ignored, and truly, as you just said, uplifting that voice.
Right.
And it's really amazing to me how you are able to capture those. What do you go through a certain process, or how do you go about, honing in on those particular voices, because they all feel very distinct?
Right. Well, I know those women. I know that history, And also myself, a lot of myself is in all of those characters. When I write women, they are very much a mirror of the women in my life. And, you know, I know what it means to be ignored. I know what it means to feel different. So I am an empath in that way. I really feel people's energy. And I'm able to relate to a number of different experiences outside of myself and within myself. So I really try to listen and make the experience as authentic as possible. If I'm writing about something that is outside of myself, such as woman identifying issues, and with that play, that was no exception. Again, we had Aaron Carr, who was our fight choreo and intimacy choreo. We had Carolyn directing. We had just an amazing woman stage manager, women at the forefront. It was just an amazing experience. And we really got to sit with that experience and have these uncomfortable discussions. And we need to be uncomfortable. And I definitely am an advocate for that.
Yeah, the theater phrase of theater is meant to disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed has been going through my head quite a bit lately. I can't quite shake that, nor do I want to, right? That I think that's a reminder of what it is that we as theater artists do. Carolyn has actually just commented that that last monologue that she has is fire. So is definitely with us watching right now. So, okay, so after you wrote Color of the Leaves, which again, for anyone who hasn't had a chance, that play is extremely impactful. It really, I was so deeply moved. But so where did you go from there? What was, you know, your next? I'm sure that you were working on something at the same time because you seem to constantly be multitasking. What was your
but I wrote that and rewrote that and rewrote that and rewrote that. Then it was produced at NKU. We took it all over the city. And obviously it was produced at Lab later. But at the time, I was writing another show called The Blackface Project. And the Blackface Project was just an amazing opportunity. It told the story of Burt Williams, who was the first Black man on Broadway, who had to wear blackface to be accepted in 1910 America and 1910 theater. And right now, we're having the conversation about what theaters can do to grow. And this is not, you know, a limited problem. It's, you know, it's a very specific foundation. And we have to understand that history. This is a global problem. This is a socioeconomic, a historic problem. And we need to be upfront in holding people accountable and speaking about those issues. And the Burt Williams story meditates on that. It really spoke to me because he went through so much. So I told that story. I did it at the Cincinnati Fringe Festival in 2018. And that was my most high profile thing that I had done up to that point. So that meant a lot as well. So much support on that one.
Yeah, that was a show for all of us. And I mentioned this to you the other day, for all of us fringe artists that year who, for those of you who are watching and may not know, when you participate in the Cincy Fringe Festival, you're an artist or a producing company, you are granted a pass to see the other shows. However, that is if the show has seats available. Your show was sold out. Sold out completely, and I managed to make it in as one of the very few artists accepted one night. And they're like, you can sit on the ground over here, and I snuck around to the other side and like leaned up against a pole because it was so impactful. And you did have so much buzz. You were on the news. It was so high profile. And that piece really made an impact.
And that was just so moving to see the audiences coming out and having a conversation and responding to the text, responding to this person's story and my interpretation of that story. People were crying, and it was just an emotional thing. There was something spiritual happening with that one, and it was a lot. It was a lot emotionally, but we made it through.
So for those of you who are just joining us, my name is Lauren Carr, and I'm the Director of Education, Engagement, and Inclusion at Ensemble Theater. And this is Meet the Artist, and I have with me this evening playwright extraordinaire, Isaiah Reaves. If you have any questions for Isaiah, please feel free to go ahead and type those into the comment box, and we will address those. So Isaiah, you have such a, and I mentioned this to you, and I know that I've said it to others when I'm, kind of fawning over you.
Yeah.
But you have such a distinct voice that in reading your pieces, I can always tell when you have written something, whether I know that it is or not. In your artist statement that you have on your website and that you have through New Play Exchange, it really stands out to me as something just kind of profound, in talking about that you are dedicated to shine a light on Black LGBTQ stories and committed to sharing pieces of your own story through a historical perspective. How did you, and I know that you've talked about, the influences and the things that you were watched and read and were kind of raised on, but how did you kind of get to that point in your statement as an artist?
It was a journey. It was a long and painful journey. When you're young and you are a Black boy and you don't fit the mold of what a Black boy is supposed to be, you are a target in more ways than one. And I grew up with that. And it was a very difficult coming of age for me, claiming ownership of being gay, figuring out that I was gay, and figuring out that my Black identity and my gay identity could coexist and that I could use both. That was a very long journey. There were experiences with bullying. And I always talk to the youth and I say, it's okay to be different and it gets better. We're socialized to be the same. That's really what we're socialized to do. And there are educators such as yourself who are slowly but surely changing that. It's so important for youth to feel safe in the classroom and to not feel that they have to be like someone else. And that's what I felt for so long. I felt like I had to be something that I was not. And that pain, I put into the work, I used it, because at one point I allowed it to fester inside. And instead of allowing it to fester inside through the work, I was able to tell those stories, to share those experiences. And that's how I arrived at my artist statement. It was really that long journey, even though I'm only 22 and there is a much longer time to go. I'm happy that I can go forward growing from here as opposed to shrinking inward, using those things that I struggled with to really speak to people.
Well, actually, what you just said leads us into a question from Carolyn Gatto Clifford, because you got to be careful. She's always watching. Carolyn has asked, what are some of the ways you have used self-care when writing these difficult topics?
That's a great question. I struggled with it for a long time. For instance, when I did the Blackface project and performed in it, I was not taking care of myself at all. I was going. And with my training, with my technique from the likes of Brian Robertson and Ken Jones and Daryl Harris, they taught me how to step away when I needed to. And that's the thing. And also having a sense of perspective on those experiences is important, and that alters the context. So I'm able to come to it. I'm able to approach the work from a particular place that is not as raw because I have that perspective. So it's about stepping away when you need to. It's about going days and weeks, months without writing so that you approach something with fresh eyes. And when you feel yourself going into that dark place, you're able to step out.
Wow. So you've mentioned his name a few times. And for those people who have not had the pleasure of working with Daryl Harris, it just feels like knowing Daryl as distantly as I do for so many years, I feel like I can kind of see some of his influence in your writing and just your presence at times, because Daryl to me always has this soothing demeanor where I just always feel a little bit more at ease. Can you talk about what it is to have such strong role models like that here in Cincinnati?
I would be so different without those influences. I would be so different. I cannot imagine myself without those influences, without people like Daryl, where it's deeper than simply the work. It's about building a familial bond. And he really is a spiritual guide, a spiritual father to me. We've talked about so many very deep things, and he's really held my hand and uplifted me along the way. There are so many people, so too many to name, that have been like that for me. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank them for being there for me and for listening and for never making me feel intimidated and for doing that for others. Daryl does so much for so many. There are so many people who have been touched and impacted by his kindness, his generosity of spirit and time. He really means a lot to me. Ken Jones, I had the Ken Jones Playwriting Scholarship. And I remember I had my freshman BFA interview with Ken Jones and Brian Robertson, and I was so nervous. And they immediately made me feel at ease. They immediately made me feel welcome and comfortable, and that my stories mattered and that other stories mattered. So that meant everything.
So one of the things that I have been wondering, and Amy Barbian has just asked the question as well, as kind of a spinoff of what I was going to ask you. Amy has asked, are there playwrights that you use for inspiration for your work? So I'm going to take that a step further, and favorite playwright and why?
That's becoming more and more challenging the further I go, because there are so many incredible playwrights. I have two answers to that.
Okay.
Of all time, probably Tennessee Williams, because even though his stories are very much of their time, they're very much a product of their era, and we need to have that discourse, he's so poetically skilled and gifted. He knows how to really touch on the human condition, the heart condition. His stories are human stories. I can relate to them. Anyone very different from me can relate to them. And we have a lot in common, actually. You know, he was from New Orleans. Much of my family is from New Orleans. I'm going to the University of Iowa. He went to the University of Iowa. There's a weird connection going on there. But Streetcar, I think Streetcar Named Desire, even putting it within the context of its era, sociologically, anthropologically, it's one of, if not the greatest play to me, because that really, I pull so much from that. And Jeremy O. Harris. I love Jeremy O. Harris. I saw Slave play on Broadway. It was the first Broadway show I ever saw, directed by Cincinnati's own Robert O'Hara. And I just thought, wow, there's space for me, because he's kicking down the door. He's kicking down the door for stories like mine to be accepted in quote unquote mainstream space, which is so exciting and dynamic and unheard of. And playwrights like Danja Love, there's so many queer Black playwrights, womanist playwrights, too many to name, across generations, across eras, but those are the two that come to mind.
So Victoria has a question that is, do you have other historical figures or periods or events you're excited to write about in the near future?
Wow, so many. I have a contemporary piece, which is going to really surprise some people. I've been working on that. I've never written a full-length contemporary piece, which surprises a lot of people, but I feel that I'm in a place in my craft where I really want to speak on our moment. And I've been using quarantine as an opportunity to further develop that idea. And there are a number of other projects, you know, some of which I will not reveal now, because those are some surprises. And everyone who knows me knows I love a good surprise. But as far as historical era, I would love to explore the 1920s. I would love to write about Black gay male friendship in 1920s flapper culture with Black gay men who helped birth flapper culture, even though that has been erased from our history. So I would love to do something along those lines.
That's amazing. Well, one of the figures that you spoke on, or that you've written about just in a snippet, when Tori Wiggins was on Meet the Artist several weeks ago, we talked about the 10-minute connections justice evening that ETC had done, where we actually put an open call to playwrights to submit a 10-minute play kind of inspired by Dominique Morisseau's Night Vision, a 10-minute play around the theme of justice. And you wrote a powerful play called Wake Up Child. And for those of you who are watching, if you would like to watch a snippet of that, just a little hook into Isaiah's work, in the first week of Cincinnati, I'm going to mess this up.
Cincinnati Black Theater Artist Collective.
Cincinnati Black Tack did monologues for us, by us, and Burgess Bird performed a monologue from your incredible play, Wake Up Child. Oh, there's a picture from the reading that we had at ETC. That was such an incredible piece, and you did explore historical figures because you were talking about Emmett Till.
Yes, yes. I really wanted to go in from the perspective of Mamie Till, Emmett Till's mother, because of the police brutality I was seeing. Mamie Till's grief mirrors the grief. Grief isn't even the word to describe it, but the horror, the trauma of the Black mothers who are losing their sons and daughters to police brutality. And that really spoke to me, that connection. And I thought, why can't we marry the past and the present? That's a lot of what my work does. It marries historical context with the present so that we can take something contemporary away. And I felt that Wake Up Child was an amazing opportunity to do that. The Justice Connections opportunity was a great opportunity to do that. And to have that conversation, I appreciated that there was a talk back with the audience. I appreciated everyone who came out for that. It was a beautiful event. And Burgess, Candace, they all did amazing work.
Yeah, it was a very powerful piece to hear. And unfortunately, because I was in a piece written by Derek Snow, I was behind the actors. So it's one of those pieces where I really wish I'd been able to truly see their pieces. So when Cincinnati Black Tack did that piece a few weeks ago in their Monologues for Us by Us project, I was so excited to be able to see Burgess's face as she expressed that. It was really, that's such a powerful piece. And again, I do encourage anyone who's watching to please check out that video, because not only is Burgess Bird's performance of your piece so beautiful, but the words that you put in that 10-minute video expressing why you wrote that piece, just, again, your heart is so big and it just emanates off the screen, and it's one of those amazing things that translates.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
Actually, those who know you will say, I'm actually not that sweet. I'm just honest. So what is next for you? What's coming up?
Grad school. I am leaving Cincinnati and moving to Iowa City to continue my education in pursuit of an MFA at the Iowa Playwrights Workshop, which is the oldest graduate playwriting MFA in the country. So I'm really, really honored to be in that company on fellowship, to be able to develop new work. So there will be new plays coming. So I'm just so thrilled. Well,
I am hoping that you are like us native Cincinnatians, where we always end up back here, right? So I did the same, where, I grew up here, left, and something just pulls you right back. There's something about Cincinnati that's, it just kind of is transformative in that way, that it does bring us back to our hometown.
Well, I will be visiting frequently because my grandmother's here. And I love her so much. My mom is here. I love her so much. Both of them are just phenomenal Black women who are the reason for my being. And I really look forward to seeing them. I will be frequently visiting. And I'm just open to the future. I'm excited. I am just in a positive state of mind. I've had a lot of time for self-reflection. And I'm really ready to take this leap.
Oh. Isaiah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It really has been absolutely pleasure in talking with you. And I I enjoy your work so much. As I've said to you, in preparing for tonight, didn't realize how many of your plays I've been so fortunate to hear, to read, to see. And I know that the impact that you've made on Cincinnati and the Cincinnati arts community is very strong and will be very longstanding. So for those of you who are watching right now, there's Isaiah's website listed on the bottom of the screen. Check him out. For production companies, directors, Isaiah is on New Play Exchange. Please check out his work. It is such an amazing opportunity. Follow him on Instagram. He's got some great, amazing things to say. You really are a wonderful voice right now and a beautiful light for all of us to be able to see shining through.
Oh, thank you so much. And in conclusion, I'd just like to say Black Lives Matter, Black stories matter. Let's continue to do the work. Let's not lose the fact that we're grieving, that we're mourning, that we're having a discourse that is very needed in the theater community and outside of it, the world at large. Let's be kind to each other and love each other and be considerate of each other.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, because it is truer words. Again, that's why you are the playwright, right? That's because exactly what you said, though. And I would be remiss if I did not mention we are in June. So Black Lives Matter, Black Gay Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives.
Trans lives, yes. Yes.
Sorry. And it is so important to remember these things as we are celebrating Pride Month. Is everyone, we are very fortunate that we do that every year, but remembering where that came from and where that was started, and to really hold all of these fruits and honor them. So
yes, and they deserve to be on stage. They deserve to have their voices heard. They deserve to be in administration. Black trans lives across the board. Everybody, all Black lives matter.
Period.
Period.
Thank you, Isaiah, so much. I so much appreciate having you on. For everyone who's watching next week, please tune in. We have another special guest. We have Sparkle Lee joining us, aka Dan Davidson. If you're not familiar with Storytime with Sparkle, please check that out. We're very excited to continue this discussion of artists, especially as we're going through the month of June and celebrating Pride and the pride of all of our gay artists. And thank you so much, Isaiah, for joining us. And please, I hope that you have a wonderful evening. And I really hope to see you soon, because I want to hug you before you leave for Iowa.
I want to hug you too. I just want to hug everybody. I miss that.
Absolutely. Human contact. We're all like, getting a little desperate for it. Thank you, Isaiah. Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you all for watching. Have a great evening.